Well, 2 points. I keep hearing creationists say there's no transitional forms in the fossil record, but what is Archaeopteryx? If not a transitional form between birds and reptiles, and there are others like that. I can't retrieve the names off the top of my head.
From what I understand about that is, when they dated Archaeopteryx, they said that this was a transition from a reptile to a bird. But they have older dated fossils of birds than Archaeopteryx.
Which are also a transitional.
So that's the reverse of what
No.
Archaeopteryx was trying to.
Not necessarily. That doesn't mean that Archaeopteryx has to be the ancestor of all birds. There could be other.
But that's what they're using it as.
Excuse me.
I don't think anybody said that.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
Archaeopteryx is a transitional species in that it is an intermediate species, let's put it that way, between reptiles and birds. The earlier birds you're talking about, at least some of those, I don't know what specific ones you're talking about, are also intermediate types. They're, you could say, as much reptile as birds. It's almost like flipping a coin, whether you want to call them one or the other, so that it becomes false to say that there are no intermediates between reptiles and birds. This shows that they can be. And since what we frequently have is branching rather than just straight lines through geological periods, more often our chances of finding fossils tend to be there somewhere on the branches rather than in the process of changing into the next one. And because the changes are relatively gradual. And I'm losing what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, we're almost going over the same ground again. I wanted to say one kind of a joke on the topic, and then I want to address his question next because he's been waiting for a while. As far as transitional species, if you could take a time machine and bring some Homo erectus specimens into the present, you could check out the interbreeding possibilities with modern humans. To get some erectus and some sapiens even to look at each other, you might have to take everybody to a bar and wait for closing time. But who knows? We might all be the same species. The designation of these as separate species seems based on morphological rather than on interbreedability grounds. Some correlation would be expected, but I can't see how this classification would be certain. And this somewhat speaks to MJ's point that you have to pick something in order to describe these life forms. And in a certain sense, your words don't always necessarily perfectly match every single specimen, but you have to make some judgment calls in all of this. And so that enters into this. Now that was done with that, and I wanted to get the gentleman's question in the light coat there.
Okay, to the creationists, I would ask this question: why is it necessary to have a creator explain the origin of life when the creator itself, herself, or itself can apparently explain the origin of itself?
Do you have any kids?
I would say
he can explain the origin of those.
No, the thing is, if you have kids, there are things you cannot explain to your kids. I don't care how old they are. There's some things you don't explain to your kids. Okay? For us to demand of God to explain everything to us right now is where we fall into error. And the religionists fall, and creationists fall into the error the same way that the scientists do.
We all deal with metaphor,
Yeah.
and our explanations are metaphor. Mathematics is a form of metaphor, and it's not the thing itself.
Okay, I've got another.
Actually, I'd like to answer this question.
Okay.
Christianity, in particular, believes in an infinite God, infinite power, infinite knowledge, and since we're finite beings, if that is indeed true, then one of the things I've got to admit off the starting line here is I can't understand something infinite. I've got a very finite mind. But he, in the Bible, attempted to communicate some basic information. Now, from science, We know that you have to have matter and space in order to have time. The three go together. So when God created, that leaves him outside of time and space as we know it. We can't think in terms of infinite existence without time. We think within time. How he got there, maybe he'll tell us one day. Maybe he's, well, actually the Bible says he's eternal. And again, that's outside of a time-space continuum. We were created in a very finite universe with finite minds. And yeah, if I could understand the God that I believe in, then there would be reason to think that I created him in my own head.
I think that Bruce's point was rather, what have you explained by saying that we will explain the complexities of the universe by positing that God made it?
I will speak to that for a moment. I've got an essay here that's a topic that falls under something I've called misusing God's name. To say that God created the world tells something, but it does not explain anything. All it does is take one mystery, the world's existence, and substitute for it an even greater mystery, God. It tells nothing about how or why God did it, nothing about how the world actually works, nothing about how any phenomenon relates to any other, nothing about the size or speed or scope or limitations of any phenomenon. The way to understand such things is to study the things themselves. Whatever your total knowledge of the world may be, stating that God created it adds no more to your knowledge than saying that Santa Claus did it. Either claim is but a single factoid, saying little that makes any difference, and hence is in vain. And then this goes on, but in addition to not genuinely explaining anything, rather just replacing one mystery with another, to bring God into the picture adds no predictability. Nobody knows what God's going to do next.
He wasn't talking to rocks. He wasn't talking to the cosmos. He was talking to us as, quote, his children. He was trying to teach us basically how to interact. And if you look at it from that, I don't know, but if you look at it from that point of view, nobody's...
It's all right. He has privileges.
Well, the Bible doesn't start out saying this is a book of science, and it's a bit of a misusage of it to use it in that fashion. And I mean, different people will argue that these are just non-overlapping magisteria. The world of physical science is one thing. We study it with naturalistic methods. The world of the spirituality, maybe even morality and ethics, is another world. Principality altogether different. Some people might say never the twain shall meet, but and maybe that would be a good idea because it would prevent a lot of fighting.
Well, I don't know who came up with the quote, but they are two separate realms in the sense that science gives us the ages of rocks and religion gives us the rock of ages.
Well, Galileo said the Bible tells us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. And
Right.
same thing.